Hey everybody, it's Patter, and I am really excited to be here today because I'm with my friend Theo Lucier. And Theo, hey, there you are, buddy. And Theo's awesome, guys. Theo, just really took on his body when I first knew him, and the label that he used out in the world was a biohacker. And I was like a big rage 8, 10 years ago, and Theo's right on the edge of it. He's like, I'm gonna get my vessel healthy, and you name the topic and he would just research it and research it and research it, and then you ask him a question and he could draw connections from different scientific bodies and the way things work. And I've just always been in awe because my mind doesn't work that way. And over the course of the decade that we've known each other, he's continued to grow and expand and flower and become somebody more. And so biohacker, I was like, do you call yourself a biohacker anymore the other day? And he's like, no, not really. I think of myself more as a health research now, and it's perfect. And the way I want to explain that to you guys is it's like instead of looking all inward, saying, I got to heal my body, he's looked outward and said, my body's connected to all of this. So, how am I going to become the most vibrant version of me in a connected world, connected to all of this? Because I can't separate them anymore. And that has caused you, Theo, to learn some amazing tools. And the one what we're going to jump into today is the Bovis meter and the Bovis scale. Like, what is it? Because that has helped you. It's one of the tools, and we'll do other videos, but it's one of the tools that has helped you to connect what you see in the world to something quantifiable. So first part, tell us why quantifiable is like the way you do it. Tell us a little about how your brain works, a little bit different than mine. And then let's jump into what the Bovis scale is.
Sure. Yeah. And, I'm not super left brain. There are people who demand a study before they'll believe anything or even acknowledge it. And that's kind of like the people that are really focused on scientific studies. If you're really invested in that point of view, I mean, did things exist before studies existed? Sure. There's universal truths, right? And those hold true in health and subtle energy as they do for anything else. I mean, I'll just say that as my body continued to get healthier and more cleaned out, I could feel things more in the subtle energy world because I cleaned out the noise, especially after I did several heavy metal detoxes. All of a sudden, I could feel the subtle energies more and more. And that started with your structured water devices and help and advice you gave me, and it started there, and then here we are. And
That's amazing, right? The way consciousness grows together and we meet at a vibrational point on the
yep.
scale, and then we're a support to one another to keep going higher. I can't, I'm sorry for interrupting, but I just can't
No,
help
that's
jump in.
that's it. I mean, the journey actually really started with you because I was at the time we met, I was very invested in um, the three-dimensional physical biohackery kind of health world and supplements and that kind of quantifiable stuff. And then with the structured water, I was like, huh. Right after I had my first class, I was like, this is weird. This is different. This water tastes different. It looks different. It feels different in my mouth. Okay, there's a whole nother world out there that I don't even know about. And then you introduced me to Olin Franklin, who I consider a mentor of mine, and she's taught me a lot about subtle energy and got me pointed in the right direction. And then I just ran with it. I just love it. I love researching. It's how I relax at night is literally just by researching this stuff. And before we get into the next segment here, I just want to say for people, because this was difficult for me to understand at first, but it's actually like really easy. So in the left brain mechanistic view that Western society holds so dear currently, is that's about quantifying things. So if we use sugar for an example, and you have a cinnamon roll, you can say this cinnamon roll has 9 grams of sugar in it. That's a quantifiable amount. Um, Measurement of quality is different. We're measuring the qualities of something. So you can say this cinnamon roll tastes very sugary to me. Well, what is very sugary to me might not be very sugary to you, because it's a quality. So what we're talking about in this video is a qualitative assessment. So we're assessing the quality, the energetic quality of things. And that's what this is all about. So Patter, is that kind of making sense?
Yeah. And
Okay.
before we go on too far, I had no idea I influenced you so much in that way. It's like such an honor to know that I made that difference in your world and that
That's where
you,
it started. Yeah, that is
that's
actually where it
amazing.
started. Yeah, it was when I ordered a device from you and I called, and I think you picked up the phone call because you saw the area code and you said, people from that part of the country usually, are interested in this stuff. Um, and so you took the call, and then I was sold, got it, and that's where it started. I was like, okay, if my water can taste, feel, and look this different. I even remember watching it fall, and it didn't fracture apart like tap water did. Tap water kind of fragments apart when it falls through the air, and this water, I think it's watering a plant or something, and it was like ropey. It's more viscous and it cohesive.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
has a spin to it. Yeah.
pretty
It's
cool.
just an amazing detail I didn't expect today. And yeah, please keep unfolding it. This is beautiful.
Yeah, so I got really into subtle energy, um, harmonization, and one the main reason is because I was told by Holland Franklin that you can block all the EMF you want, um, and that's great, and you should do that, but you cannot block the subtle energy part of a three-dimensional electromagnetic wave. So the subtle energy part is the information that electromagnetic wave carries, and that's called a scalar wave. And actually, all of modern electromagnetic theory is based on the mathematics of James Clerk Maxwell from the 1850s. He did all the math for modern electromagnetic theory. Heinrich Hertz based all his work on Maxwell, and so did Einstein later after Hertz was around. And Maxwell had scalar energy and scalar waves in his original equations. And so did Hertz and so did Einstein, but they took them out for political reasons because the instrumentation of the time couldn't measure them. And that's actually not true. Back then, they had pendulums and other subtle energy things like dowsing rods, and you certainly can measure scalar waves with those instruments, but they weren't considered scientific because they require a human nervous system to work, essentially. Um, and After I read that and I read some of Maxwell's original work, I was like, oh my God, this is just this is wild. So there's really something to this. And then I just took it and ran with it. And I got into the European tradition of dowsing, which is called radiesthesia over there. And it's really interesting in North America, the dowsing world, and dowsing is just finding, looking at, or measuring subtle energy. That's all that is. In North America, it's all intuition. It's just pure intuition. There's and feeling, and that's just how it is here, and I love that. The Europeans actually attempted to turn it into a science, um, and they have a much more scientific approach, and they call it radiesthesia, and it's all based on a fellow from late 1890s, maybe early 1900s, called Mermet, and he wrote a famous book, and all European tradition is based on that. But they got good at measuring things, the quality of things. So remember, this cinnamon roll is sugary or it's not sugary. It's a quality of the cinnamon roll. It's not the quantity. This cinnamon roll is 9 grams. So this brings us to present and the Bovis scale, which I'm just a huge fan of because it's really easy to use, and you can download and print the charts for free. And I've got some I'll show you here in a minute. But the Bovis scale was invented by a physician who did long-term care of chronically ill patients, and he was trying to figure out the energetic content of the foods he was feeding his patients. So he wanted to know the vitality of food. And so he got together with an engineer, last name is Simonton, who was one of his patients, I believe. He had typhoid. And they put together this scale, and it's still used today quite a bit. So here's what it looks like. So this is the original one. And I printed these out big so you can see it. So it goes from 500 to 14,000, and on the inner ring it says deficient, low, normal, high, excess. So on the Bovis scale of, this is the original one, so 500 to 14,000, and they're called Bovis units. You're measuring the intensity of the subtle energy of the object, the room, the food, even the person, whatever you're measuring. So 6,500 Bovis units is neutral. So below 6,500, things, rooms, locations take energy from you. Above 6,500, they give you energy. They are reaffirming to your life force. And this scale was used for a long time. It is still used in France quite a bit because that's where it was invented. And they've kind of taken it and ran with it, and it's used clinically in a lot of cases over there. Here, it's not known so much. But the way this scale works is you just hold a pendulum right here, and you hold the intention in your mind. I want to measure the energetic content of this room in Bovis units, and your pendulum will go and it'll find one of these, and it'll just oscillate like that, and then you have your measurement. And I like this one because it's very simple and really easy to use. If you know how to use a pendulum, which a 5-minute YouTube video can get you started, you can use this. And so with the structured water devices, with the foods I was eating, and then the house I was living in, I started measuring the energetic content using this scale, and that brings us to the cosmic tower. Do you want to jump in here? Do you want me to kind of keep going?
No, thanks for sharing how the scale works, and yeah, tell us what you've learned with it, applying it to the Cosmic Tower project.
Well, this is where it gets super interesting. So I learned how to map dowse too. Map dowsing is really interesting, and it's a lot easier than you would expect. Probably the most famous American water dowser of all time was named Vern Cameron. He was active. He's born in the late 1890s. And he's personally responsible for locating thousands of wells actually in Southern California, in San Diego County, Riverside County, really dry desert, rocky areas. He was able to find very well producing wells. And he's also the reason why Lake Elsinore even exists. Lake Elsinore is a lake in the middle of a desert, and he located and had drilled 3,600 gallon per minute wells there that keep the lake full, which is incredible. I mean, Lake Elsinore is in the desert. And he, through his friend Bill Cox, who is a writer, wrote 2 books. One of them was called Aqua Video. It's about locating water. And there's another one that Bill Cox later wrote on map dowsing. So I went through those books. I used them like a manual and learned how to map dowse. And Patter and I were talking, and we said, it'd be interesting to measure people's houses before and after they get their cosmic tower. So I did that. And I'm not going to use anyone's names here, but I have my notes from doing some of those measurements. So one house here, before, her house was 8,000 Bovis units, which 6,500 is neutral. So she's just right above neutral with her house there. After the cosmic tower had been there for about a month, I measured it again, and it was over 14,000. So here is the end of the old scale, and the pendulum was just going like this. It wanted to keep going, but it couldn't because the number wasn't indicated. So I thought that was very interesting. And I said, shoot, I'm going to have to go get a Bovis scale with more numbers in it. And kind of the backstory there is in the mid 90s, there was a Swiss dowser named Blanche Mers. And she found that the Bovis scale, the old one that stopped at 14,000, wasn't able to be used as much as it was before because the consciousness of the planet had continued to increase as we because this is a big time of change on our planet and our solar system, because we're exiting Kali Yuga, we're exiting the Piscean age, we're going into the Aquarian age, and we're getting into a Satya Yuga. And there's a whole explanation of why that happens, but it's related to our solar system in relation to where it is on the galactic plane, whether it's exposed to more of the information that comes from the center of our galaxy, or whether it's blocked when it's right on the plane of the ecliptic. It gets wild. But the bottom line is that consciousness, spiritual energy is increasing on Earth right now. And so they had to adjust the scale. So I was able to find one from back then. So they took it from 14,000 to 18,000. They had a plus here, and you can see here it says physical energy and spiritual. So clearly the cosmic tower in these houses was, in these, it was trying to cross over into the spiritual section of the scale. And then later, this is the one that's agreed upon now, this is an elaborate Bovis chart, but you can see that it even has negative here for things that take energy, but it goes all the way. So here's neutral right here, and then it goes all the way over here, which I think, yeah, over 20,000 Bovis units. And this is kind of, that chart is the one that we use now. So super interesting with the cosmic towers, because another house here, just to share these numbers. So before the cosmic tower, she is at 7,000 Bovis units, which is pretty low. 6,500 is neutral. 2 days after she got the cosmic tower, she was at 10,250 Bovis units. A month after she got the cosmic tower, it was over 14,000 Bovis units. Super interesting, because the tower was doing work in that period. It's harmonizing everything there, and it can take a little bit of time. But I thought it was really interesting to take measurements at different times and figure that out. So and I've got another measurement here. She hasn't received her tower yet, but I did the tower arrival house measurement. It's at 8,000 Bovis units. So again, that's kind of in line with what I'm seeing around that 7,500 to 8,000 mark is where these houses are coming in at. And then after we get the cosmic tower in there, it just goes all the way over into kind of a spiritual, cosmic energy. So I guess they named it right.
Absolutely. That's really beautiful. I love the way you laid all that out, and the way you've helped quantify the cosmic tower. And one of the things about subtle energies is that sometimes people can't feel them, and
Yep.
sometimes people don't have the access, even though you might go watch a 5-minute YouTube video about using a pendulum and clear yourself up and just move into action with that. A lot of people could watch that video and not take action. So just to wrap up the video, any tips or suggestions you would give people who don't feel their cosmic tower and don't have the confidence that you have in this journey that you've unfolded?
So tips and suggestions for kind of
For how they
feeling it,
might,
or
yeah, about how they might strengthen their own selves as a place of knowing, so that
Mhm.
it's less about going out into the world. One of the things I heard you say already is that purifying yourself over the
Yeah.
course of the years has made space for feeling so subtle energy. So that's kind of the direction I thought you might go with the answer. But you have so many interesting things to say. I want to see what else I could kind of pull out on the table for people.
Yeah, well, there's three things. So one, there are really good courses out there if you want to learn subtle energy and dowsing techniques. Like the biogeometry system has their own scale. So this is from biogeometry, and you can use this to measure a room or a house, and it'll give you a qualitative assessment of the energy quality in what the biogeometry system calls BG3, which is an all harmonizing energy. And their courses are really good. So you could take that and learn to do that. The pendulum that biogeometry designed to work with this scale is specifically made for architects that didn't believe in dowsing. So it just works whether you think whether you believe in it or not. It's kind of just like an instrument. To be fair, with your other points, I did become more energy sensitive as I detox. So for me, detox was by far had the biggest impact on my ability to feel subtle energies, especially heavy metals. And there's a lot of, you know, stuff about detoxing heavy metals. I'm not going to recommend anyone listening to this just go rush into that, because you can do a lot of harm to yourself unless you do it correctly. But just keep it in the back of your mind. And of course, I'm always available if you have questions regarding that. But it can be a little tricky. But oh my gosh, out of all the things that move the needle on my physical health, it was detox, especially. The third thing I'll throw out is that, you know, I felt the most spiritual, and the point in my life where I could feel subtle energies the most, just walking around, I could feel stuff. Is amazing. It was when I did the dry fast. So dry fasting is not for everyone. Fasting is not even for everyone, like a normal water fast. But I'll tell you what, I did a 5-day dry fast, and oh my gosh, like you could literally feel everything, and that in itself is a very intense detox, and not one I recommend that people jump into. But it is free. It's incredibly effective, and it's one of the only ways to detox the inside of your cells. There's a few other ways too. And if you're interested in it, there's a fellow named August Dunning. He wrote a book called The Phoenix Protocol, which is basically all the information on this in English. The original technique is from Russia. He also has a YouTube channel, so that's something you can check out. Other than that, I will say this. You know, my I have this older brother he's a computer programmer, and he's super left brain, and I test all this subtle energy stuff on him. I actually tested your water structuring units on him, because I'm like, well, if this guy can sense a difference, then clearly it works. Because he doesn't believe in any of this stuff, thinks it's all silly, all the things. And so when I got the tower in my house, I just set it up, just left it there, and didn't say anything to him. And had him over and gave him some water from it. And he actually noticed there was something different about the water. So I would say pay attention to the water that you have around the tower, because for most people that I've had over to my place, when they have the water, they always pause and they kind of look at me and they say, "Oh, this water is really good. What did you do to it?" So that's my 2 cents anyway.
That's beautiful. Well, thank you for everything you've shared today.
Yeah,
When we wrap up here, I'm going to ask you for some of your current credentials to put in the video underneath the video, so that
sure.
when people want to track you down, guys, I happen to think that Theo needs to be running a consulting business with subtle energy, and so I love sending people to him and continuing to deepen what he's passionate about. So we'll put that information below and just contact him and ask him for help. He formulates great supplements, and he's just super curious. And right now he doesn't have a business model around all that, but who knows, maybe someday you'll be watching this video in the future and he will, and might be able to support you in some way that has business exchange in it. Generally speaking, he just helps people anyway. So we'll see what you work out with people. But thanks for sharing this information with us, Theo. I really appreciate
Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. I love talking about this stuff.
it.